Hey guys, welcome to not sunny, not at all, even really temperate California. He's Danny Shirey. I'm Dejan Kovacevic. We're from DK Pittsburgh Sports, covering the Penguins' trip out here. 1-1 so far. The split between Anaheim and LA. And why did that feel a lot worse than a split?
Well, probably because of the final score of last night's game against the Kings. The interesting part about that game was that the Penguins, they were on the second night of a back-to-back. They had to sit through the agonizingly long jersey retirement and statue unveiling for Dustin Brown. Puck drop wasn't until 8:08 p.m. local time. And they still came out and they had their legs. They were forechecking. Yeah. They were forechecking well, and there were stretches of the first period, even though Casey DeSmith let in a couple of goals that period. There were stretches where they were really giving
the Kings good.
They were giving the Kings fits getting out of their zone. They did struggle, I thought, a little bit to turn that zone time into real high-octane chances, but they still had some looks.
Yeah.
But then everything kind of
fell off. The one Zucker had in the slot, for example, where it doesn't register as a shot on goal, obviously, since he missed it by a mile, but that's – against a goaltender with an .897 save percentage, you want that in.
Yeah, and we've seen him score goals like that this season. He's been using utilizing his one-timer a lot more and kind of hopping out into those soft spots in the offensive zone and in the slot. That was exactly what we saw. He just didn't hit twine.
If you're new to these sessions, if you're on YouTube or Facebook, you can leave us a question or a comment or whatever it is that you want. And we'll put it up on the screen here and take a look at that. The next game is Tuesday night against the Sharks up in San Jose. And I got to tell you, I need to see Tristan Jarry in that net. I tell you, I don't like picking on guys when they're hurt and whatever, but once you start developing a history and you start reading between the lines of stuff that so-and-so is saying, including in public, play.
And I have a feeling he might be – I think the Penguins might be planning to start him anyway. The last time the Penguins started the same goalie in both games of a back-to-back was Matt Murray during the 2018-19 season.
Well, and they were sure, that makes sense.
And they just did that with DeSmith this weekend. So my thought process is that, okay, if you're going to throw your number two guy in there for two back-to-back games that you really need to secure some points in, that leads me to believe that Jarry's going to be back on this trip, and he is on the trip. He has been practicing with the team, and he's even told us when we asked him, were you practicing at full? Was it a limited capacity? He said, I don't know.
Yeah, that's where it's the drama, I think, is going to come to an end Tuesday night, or if there is any drama about this. He just needs to get out there and play. I asked to what we were just discussing, I asked Chris Letang last night, as keep wanting to call it Staples Center, crypto.com arena. I asked Letang how he felt about the team's start and the way the team was performing and whether or not some of that would have outweighed the final score. And this was what he had to say.
At the end of the day, we're looking at the performance, the way we came out. And I thought we did a good job in the first. It's just that, like I said, it doesn't go your way. You have to stay in the fight, and you don't want the score to get too big. So we have to shake it off and look at it.
Now, there was another subject matter of note in the game last night, and that was Sidney Crosby completely losing it. Not so much on Mikey Anderson for the cross-check to his upper back, but Sid hates anything up here.
Well, you know who he hates more? Garrett Rank.
They all hate Garrett Rank more. That, of course, was one of the two referees. He's become the new Wes McCauley in the Penguins world. You can tell. You and I are standing next to each other when Mike Sullivan's out there, and Sullivan uses Rank's name.
And Sullivan doesn't do that. Even when he is upset with the officiating after the game, he'll be real short and sweet and say, you guys saw what was going on or whatever. But he used Garrett Rank. He referenced him by name, and I think that just goes to show that. And they've had their plenty of run-ins here over the past several seasons. Nothing. I think it was all last night was maybe a culmination of those previous issues.
In fairness to Rank, though, okay, the initial calls, the 10-minute misconducts on both players was weird. Okay, the cross check was called. Sid wanted to come back and kind of, engage and say something else to him because, again, Sid really, really hates it. Anything upper back and on a neck, he goes ballistic.
Well, not only that, but Crosby claims that it was Mikey Anderson who was hollering at him as Anderson was going to the box.
Mm-hmm.
So and Crosby said when Anderson was hollering at him, he couldn't really hear what he said. So he got closer to him as Anderson was going toward the box, which is pretty typical.
It's nothing outrageous. But then when Sid gets the misconduct, he wants to find out from Rank what he got it from. Okay. And he starts following him all around the rink. This is for those of you who didn't stay up till 2 a.m. watching this. And look, at that point, he's like a baseball manager using the F word. He's begging to get tossed. Okay. He actually wants to give me that final minute and change because there was like 10 and a half minutes left in the game. Just kick me out, man.
Yeah. It was very bizarre because if you go back and watch the replay of Crosby going over, they definitely got up and were jabbing at each other a little bit, but there was nothing there. Like this was a giant nothing burger of an exchange, and we see so much worse go uncalled after the whistle all the time. Yet somehow it resulted in 2 10-minute misconducts for these players.
I don't know. I think it was Anderson was going to the box and saying something to me, so him and I kind of exchanged words, and then next thing I know, I was told I got a 10, which, I mean, can I really say what I think anyway? Let's be honest here, so
Now, the funny thing about that is that,
Can I really say what I think? That's not Sid.
The funny thing about that is that Crosby was still sitting in his locker stall well after the game had concluded. Like I went into the locker room not expecting to see it. He should have been showered and ready.
I think he wanted to say something.
I think he did too.
Yeah, they want to make sure that a referee is aware when they feel they're being targeted by a guy. And I have seen that pattern in the past where Sid would hang around after, let's say, a really rough game against the Flyers, obviously going back a while, that he'd want to make a case of some kind here. Let's go to some of your questions here. Austin asks if Jan Ruda will be back Tuesday. Penguins miss him a lot. He is eligible to come off LTIR for the game here Tuesday in San Jose. He did have a full practice with the team. However, he had a full practice. And tomorrow here in LA, they have another practice. Now, if he can get through 2 of them and look good, yes.
and I
good hockey player.
I think we'll have a pretty good idea that the Penguins will most likely run through line rushes when they practice tomorrow. And typically, day before a game, those lines are going to be the same lineup that we're going to see the following night or whenever the next game is. So if Ruda is on one of the first 3 defense pairings, that would probably bode pretty well for his chances of playing Tuesday night. If not, then I wouldn't expect.
Zach asks, I love Mike Sullivan. Why does he start Casey DeSmith on the second night of a back-to-back? It turned out not to matter. Neither of these goaltenders is very good. And I'm trying to find a nice way to say that. I'm probably not going to pull it off, okay? DeSmith is better than Tokarski. Tokarski's a minor league goalie to the bone, okay? So I think it goes more to what Danny was saying earlier, which is that they're either hoping or pushing for Jari to come back finally Tuesday in San Jose and then figuring, all right, we would ride Jari from there for a while. You got 3 division games coming when they get home. Why not?
Yeah, and the other thing is they might just not trust Tokarski all that much, which is a little concerning because this past offseason, the Penguins, you could make the case that the Penguins have lost in the first round the past couple of years because of poor goaltending or the absence of good goaltending. And they addressed that this year by signing a guy that they're not even comfortable playing on the second night of a back-to-back.
Black Cat's daddy observes in that video that we just showed, says, were my eyes deceiving? Sid the kid with gray hair? I mean, you know what? I've heard this thing about Father Time being undefeated,
Father Time is undefeated.
Yeah, I mean, that is really something here. Denny says, hey, guys, they either come out flat and don't score or they come out strong and not score. As Sully said, you can't go from an A game to an F game. What's the solution? I've got one for you, Denny. get some saves early on. Okay, it can't be like you're observing last night. That's correct. The first period, the Kings weren't flat, and that surprised me a little bit considering the length of the ceremony and that they hadn't played more than a week. Okay, that was their bye week. That was them coming out, and they came out just fine. But you got to get a save. This isn't that complicated of a sport at the end of the day.
Yeah,
you know?
I was talking to Marcus Pettersson after the game last night, and I'm sitting there. It's like, you guys came out pretty well, and but he's sitting there talking. He's like, when you go down 3 goals, especially that early in the game, of course you're going to want to keep pressing, but it's so much harder. And you could even see it as the game went on when they're down 4 and then 5 goals. It's frustrating to see them play that way, but they know they're not coming back. It's really tough, but it all goes back to when you're not able to put the puck in the net early, you've got to get those timely saves. And the Penguins were giving up some looks from, I would say they weren't ideal locations, but again, you need to come up with some saves. And I believe it was the second goal that the Smith allowed was just incredibly leaky, and it was just a backbreaking goal, even though it only put the Kings up 2-0. It was just
it was one of those that lets you know you're going to have to win this game. It sends a signal to your entire team. You can do this. They've come back, but you're going to have to score 5 goals or whatever it is against a really good team in their house on an emotional night. And it's just, Brent says, do you think the Penguins will make a trade for a goalie? I don't.
I don't either.
If I'm Ron Hextall and I find some magical way to develop cap relief, I am focused entirely on replacing Jeff Carter.
Oh, yeah, there's no question about it. I think any cap space that you can create in any organizational assets, whether it's P.O. Joseph, Ty Smith, any of the prospects like Owen Pickering,
picks,
the first-round pick that they've gotten this next draft, all of that should go toward finding a play-driving third-line center.
Yeah, and so how you would dovetail that with also getting a goalie? No, this is one of those where you just say, hey, guys, buck up, play better.
Well, and that's the thing. Coming into the season with virtually no cap space, Hextall essentially made the Penguins' bed coming into the season and didn't give himself any wiggle room if his brand new team that he put together were to fall flat.
Yeah, that's wow. That's a tough situation, but you know what? It was a self-dug hole.
Right. Well,
you don't have to sign Kasperi Kapanen into a $3 million 2-year deal.
I know we talk about it all the time, but Hextall loves to bring up, the salary cap.
As if it was dropped on his head.
And, we talk a lot about Jim Rutherford kind of left him a bit of a mess, which is true, but we're now two seasons into Hextall, 2.5 seasons really into Hextall's tenure as the team's GM, and you go back and look at some of the worst contracts on this team, he signed them.
Yep. How about that? Mike says 19 days and 4 home games left before March 3. Who will likely play their last game in Pittsburgh this month? That's Mike trying to just ask who's going to get traded. I will take the easiest possible route here. Nobody. There's no precedent for this, Mike. They don't make any changes. Brock McGinn is out there, barely visible. No points, not no goals, no points since December 22. Do you know how hard that is to be a National Hockey League forward and not score a single point in 19 games?
Well, the other thing with that, too, is that it's not like he's been playing on the 4th line like he did for a majority of last season.
No,
he's been getting third-line minutes.
And he's not doing anything with them other than being part of a pretty good penalty kill unit. And there is value in that, but not that much. There are other people who can do that. I'd find a way to teach further Drew O'Connor some penalties and get him out there. And again,
well, I'm glad you brought him up because I do.
He's here.
I know. We just said that the Penguins have had their legs these past 2 games, but at times they've looked pretty lethargic and low energy. How do you fix that? You get young, fresh, hungry legs into the lineup.
He's with us.
And Drew O'Connor, I can tell you from the conversations that I've had with him that he is extremely hungry, and you can even see that he's been shifting his game to fit more of a bottom 6 mold where he's effective on the forecheck, willing to embrace contact and be a little gritty to earn himself a spot in the lineup. Yet we still keep getting McGinn.
Clint Novak says, does the Jeff Petry trade make sense looking back at it? I remember that with trades, one thing to bear in mind is that you can look at whether they make sense in the moment, and you can also look at whether they make sense down the road. It tends to be two very different conversations in most cases. With Petry, I'm going to guess, Clint, that you're asking because Mike Matheson had a really nice game yesterday for Montreal. Okay, and that's fair, okay, because that's when you start thinking of stuff like this. I've liked Petry. I've liked him on the ice. I've liked him off the ice. He busted the wrist when he was just getting there. In fact, he and I had a good talk about this down in Anaheim a couple days ago. He was just getting to where he needed, not just in his own game, but also within the Penguins game, bearing in mind that he's new to the team. So I like it. There wasn't a future component that was lost,
So here's how I feel about the Petry deal. And I do kind of teeter with it a little bit because, like I just said, the Penguins could really use some youth in this lineup. And Petry's now 35 and his best hockey is definitely behind him. But with that being said, we've already seen that he can seamlessly step up as the team's number one in the absence of Chris Letang. And even though I think he still has a little bit to give more offensively, which might come around with a little more time. Like you said, he was just getting comfortable before that wrist injury, and now he's only got a handful of games under his belt since he's been back. But the thing about Petry is that the difference between the offensive impact he provides, not only with his shooting, but just the ability to drive play offensively.
He does too.
The discrepancy between that and John Marino is huge.
Yeah.
And I know everybody was going crazy earlier this year about the hot start that Marino had, but if now that some time has passed and you look, Marino is basically the same player now with strong defensive impacts, but he's also hurting his team in the offensive zone. And the Penguins needed, especially they needed that from the back end, and Petry can provide that. And I think more of that is going to come along. We've been seeing him make more plays.
Danny likes Petry. That's the answer here. That's the answer here. The icon asks, do you guys smell a trade brewing? The team desperately needs to boost the third line. How about a Kapanen trade to the Canucks? Okay, I'm not into the fake trades and stuff. And there's I see another one on here that I haven't put on the screen yet. Could Calgary be interested in Carter with the Sutter connection? No,
Carter is
not
going anywhere.
Carter's not going anywhere. There's not 31 out of 31 other general managers. There's no one dumb enough to take him, and it won't not over sentimentality or anything. If they wouldn't take him here, they're not going to take him anywhere because they actually still like him here,
which is a little concerning in and of itself. And that seems to stem not only from the head coach but the players as well.
Oh, I was talking about the Kings. You're talking about the Penguins.
I'm talking about
that's concerning.
I'm talking about the Penguins too.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it. And Mike Sullivan and nobody in the Penguins front office or on their coaching staff is an idiot, and they have way more access to information that we couldn't even think of.
Infinitely.
But that being said, I don't know how you could get to this point of the season after Carter played the way he did the entire second half of last season and continue to trot him out as your number 3 center.
It's a joke. And actually, hang on a second. I want to be careful with this wording here. It's not that he's the number 3 center. It's that he's a center, because the number 3 thing is just a BS designation with this team. Everyone knows who's associated with this team that the Teddy Bluger line now, with Ryan Poehling playing as well as he is, Josh Archibald back, is the more effective line. The reason that the depth chart is stacked the way it is out of respect for Carter. So you don't look like you're demoting him to the 4th line.
Well, I think that kind of leads into a greater issue that we've seen with this team this season, is that there's maybe been a little too much respect for guys that have accomplished things in the past that maybe they're not accomplishing now, like Brian Dumoulin, who he's been fine, I guess, on the top pairing recently. But again, earlier in the season when he was on the ice for basically every goal that the Penguins were giving up, and he was continuing to be trotted out there. And we've also seen that he's been put back on the top pairing as soon as the opportunity presented itself.
Every time. Mike says, of course, Carter won't be traded, but do you guys sense that he knows he's cooked? Or is he too prideful? I wonder if he thinks about hanging it up this summer.
Carter knows he's cooked because he is always out of the locker room, whether it's a practice, a game. You will rarely see him in the locker room. He is always the first one out of there.
He doesn't want to face Pittsburgh reporters. That's not just me and Danny and Taylor on our staff, he doesn't want to be anywhere near any of us.
And that's
we're radioactive to him, and he proved it last night because he saw the LA guys and
started
went
chumming it up.
Hey, and he's talking to the LA reporters, and of course, the rest of us, all go like right around him, like, hey, as long as you're standing here and actually accessible for the first time in several weeks.
Probably longer than that.
We were going to ask questions too. Guess what ended up happening?
Got cut off
right when I was about to ask mine.
Yeah, that's the only thing that makes sense.
Not by him, by the way, team official.
Right.
Okay.
That's the only thing that makes sense is that he knows he's cooked and simply doesn't want to talk about it. Because
unlike Duma, by the way, Brian Dumoulin has been the exact opposite in this regard.
Yeah, he stands in there and
every day he's answering questions, including Dumo, why are you struggling so much? Or Dumo, is this tough for you? Or whatever else, By the way, he's played pretty well on this trip. Decent, I should say.
And that's not to suggest that Carter needs to be sitting at his stall waiting for reporters to come swarm him.
We're not that important.
After every single event. But the fact that he's never, ever there, and guys aren't always going to be available after every time they hit the ice. Mm-hmm. But if you want to talk to a guy, you can pretty much guarantee that you can get him over a span of 2 events when they hit the ice.
Sure.
Carter, we go months without seeing him.
Eric Bowser says, wouldn't it be nice to have Drew O'Connor on the forecheck instead of the abyss of nothingness from McGinn, Carter, and Kapanen, especially the forecheck, though. Eric's right. What you want more than anything, more than goals, more than the physicality that, O'Connor told me that's what the coaches are preaching to him, whatever, as if that's a thing with them. His physicality is that he does this like giant pterodactyl swoop into the offensive zone and brings bodies with him. And everybody has this big crashing moment in the corner. Guess who comes out of the puck? It comes out with the puck.
The Penguins.
Yeah, he does specifically.
Oh, yeah.
And I'll do this with Danny. I'll nudge him and I'll say the one-man forecheck.
The human forecheck.
Human forecheck is what I say, actually, yeah.
Yeah, O'Connor's a very straight-ahead player, and that bodes well for what the Penguins are asking of him and how he's kind of trying to transform his game to earn himself a spot in the lineup. And when you're trotting half these guys in the bottom 6 out there that aren't doing this or think they're guys in the top 6 trying to make spinning blind passes off the half wall from the defensive zone right back into a counterattack that ends up in your own net, it's insanity to me that he's still struggling to get into the lineup. And I don't think he played poorly. Even I understand that forechecking, there's a lot more to playing hockey than forechecking, and that forechecking alone isn't going to earn you a spot.
He's been fine.
But he's been fine.
On the breakouts, good passes between the blue lines, or better yet, chip and chase in his case. And you've seen he scored some goals. It didn't matter. Nothing. Doesn't matter what he does. 2 more today. Bryn says, do Hextall and Burke survive the offseason? I'm going to answer that in a weird way and then throw it to Danny. I will believe that the Fenway Sports Group gives a flying crap about this operation when they start changing light bulbs at PPG Pints Arena, when they get rid of those awful Vegas gold faded seats in the lower bowl, and when they're even remotely visible. Other than Gino's 1,000th game, they haven't been seen.
Yes, FSG is nowhere to be
just
found.
Just a non-entity.
My answer to that question, I'm not really sure yet. I think it's going to depend on how the rest of this season plays out. If the Penguins end up missing the playoffs, I'd probably have a tough time seeing this regime stay in control. But if they do make the playoffs and lose in the first round, maybe that's still the same case. But at that point, we're maybe splitting hairs here, because I don't think there's anybody that really thinks this is a cup contender or a team that can go on a run here. So even if they do squeak in and lose in the first round, is it really going to even surprise anybody? Mm-hmm. It's tough to say.
We are 2 hours from kickoff. Oh, boy. Now we're getting chased out. That's the alarm going off at our hotel. Well, anyway, Steeler Nation asks our Super Bowl predictions. We can shout it over the alarm. I've got Eagles by 3.
Yeah, I'm taking the Eagles as well. I'll take Eagles by 6.
Oh, now it ends. All right. So anyway, yeah, my thinking on Philadelphia is the Eagles' internal pressure from the defensive line between Fletcher Cox and our old friend Javon Hargrave is going to force Patrick Mahomes to move from the pocket, which normally would be a great thing for the Chiefs.
But
it will not be on this day because I don't believe he's anywhere near 100%.
Oh no, that was abundantly clear in the
championship game.
in the AFC Championship game.
Yeah, no question about that. Anyway, thanks guys for watching and everything else. It's available on podcast afterward on all platforms. We're everywhere. Oh no, here they go.
All right,
again.
we're out of here.